Welcome, Andrew Staton, to Modern Martial Arts Television. Once again, good to see you here. We're going to talk about Enter the Dragon and the 50th anniversary and a review of all that entails. So first big question is, why is August the 19th such a big deal?
Hi, Will. Yeah, great to join the show. Yeah, August the 19th. It's not so big in England or Britain, but it's massive in America. That's the day that Enter the Dragon was screened all over America, as far as the IMDb is concerned. I mean, there had been a massive premiere at Man's Chinese Theatre, and it was massive. I mean, if you ever look at the pictures on, the internet, the whole frontage was Enter the Dragon. It was huge. There was posters, banners, everything was up there. So it was a great big, to say it was a Man's Chinese Theatre, it did actually, it tick all the boxes, Man's Chinese Theatre, a Chinese-esque film, it really was superb. So 19th of August, it gets released, and the people over there go absolutely wild. Everything has been actually set up all over. The press and publicity was really geared up. Still quite funny that there was very little mention of kung fu. It was still mentioning karate and judo and things like that. They didn't really mention kung fu because it really hadn't taken place, barring from what David Carradine had done on television. It wasn't there. But the whole ethos of Enter the Dragon being there was beautiful. It really had a fantastic launch. Just to say Bruce had died a few weeks previous, it really got sounded out there. As audiences came in, not expecting whatever, it was, quite interesting that they went into the theatre, but was more interesting when they came out. Because as soon as they came out, they were all like electrified with Bruce Lee. They came out with the Bruce Lee cries and kicking the air and leaping and jumping around. Very much like what happened in England quite a few months later. But yeah, everybody was electrified by this little, I think 5'7.5" or something like that. But literally, this small, very thin. I mean, he was so super thin in the opening scene with Sammo Hung when he's in the Shaolin Temple and doing the first fight. I mean, he's skinny. He is one skinny guy, you know what I mean? But everything there was super muscles. Muscles were rippling all over the place. Everything was tuned to perfection. And of course, balanced against the weightiness, but still the power of Sammo Hung. Sammo Hung looks a kind of a hunk, you know what I mean? But literally, Sammo can move. Bruce had persuaded him to actually appear in that open scene. It wasn't actually fitted in the film. It wasn't in there. It was something that actually Bruce came up with as an opening. And so this fight was absolutely tremendous, you know what I mean? And really set the theme to the film. But barring from that, yeah, everybody came in and out of the cinemas, and it was totally electric. And of course, one of the best things for any film is the word of mouth. Once it got out there, you gotta go see there. The other big film of that year was The Exorcist, and The Exorcist had actually had the same kind of weird kind of mouth to mouth sort of like pushing from work, you've got to go see this film, you'll be scared to death. People were, coming out and needing counselling from The Exorcist. Well, you can be quite assured nobody needed counselling after seeing Enter the Dragon. People were just, I want to go and learn martial arts now, and that was it. That was the big push. I mean, once you'd seen Bruce in Enter the Dragon, yeah, that was it. Fantastic. Everybody had to go at least try a martial art once. And a lot of us stuck it out for a lot longer, me being one of them, and thousands and thousands of others around the world were all influenced by Bruce's martial arts. And of course, suddenly people started saying, well, hang on, we'll go learn karate, because that was all that was available. That was all that was available. There wasn't thousands of kung fu schools at the time. There was just the basic amount, but there's loads of karate schools. So karate schools made a fortune. Judo and all that sort of made fantastic amounts of money on Bruce Lee, because kung fu was around later date. Of course, the kung fu schools start coming up. There was every style you could ever think for, and some styles were very, very strange. You know, yeah, the left wing cloud of the dragon kung fu. Yeah, okay. You know, what's that all about? You know, I think that's sort of like being dreamt in somebody's dream, and they had a nightmare with it. Anyway, but that was it, and Enter the Dragon was just electric. You know, I mean, it was fantastic. And the 19th of August was that day. So, yeah, it's a big celebration day today. And I think, you know, I'm sure that around the world there will be, you know, televisional sort of like tributes to the film. Let's put it that way. I'll be surprised if there isn't somewhere and something and somebody actually putting a TV channel on and saying 19th of August, we've got to put something tribute to Enter the Dragon. So let's see, and we'll report back on that as and when this day has gone by.
So Andrew, what was it actually like being in the movie theatre back then, seeing it for the first time, way back in 19th of August 1973?
I can't actually specifically say that because basically I wasn't in America, so you know I didn't get that vibe. But I can actually give you a little bit of a taste of what it was. You, as I say, as I mentioned in the first sort of like question, the first thing that hits you as soon as you see, you know, there is not much time waiting for the film to get going because immediately you've got the Sammo Hung and Bruce fight, and that sort of like sets the scene straight away. Kind of little thing that I do want to mention, though, that we were always a little bit wowed by, and then later on it was a little bit, and I'll talk about this a little bit later down the line, but the thing that was a little bit, oh, wow, was, of course, the monks hold their hands up, and Bruce claps his hands and does a double somersault over the hands and lands, and you're thinking, wow, this guy's just had a fight, and then he does a somersault of that. That's just amazing. Well, of course, people didn't know, and people had not got the history of Bruce Lee at that time, and didn't know that Bruce had really hurt his back way back when. And of course, doing things like that was just not in his capabilities. I mean, doing martial arts and fighting, yeah, he could still do that, but jumping through the air and doing double somersaults was not him. And that's thanks to an unsung hero that I think is getting a little bit more notoriety now, is Yuen Wah. I mean, Yuen Wah did double. And I think in one of his interviews, he does say, he says, I look so much like Bruce Lee from the back. He says, everybody looks at me and go, oh, look at my bum. And that's how he says it, look at my bum. I just look like Bruce Lee. From the back, he had the lats and everything. He looks just like Bruce Lee from the back. But that ain't Bruce Lee, that's Yuen Wah. Getting on to the rest of the movie, nicely put together. You know, you've got sort of like flashback sequences, you know, you've got the introduction of John Saxon, you know, Jim Kelly, and not much with Peter Archer, but yeah, it's all there. It's all put together so you build up, and you know, you building the storyline together. Then slowly but surely, you know, we get through the picture, and you know that Bruce is, you know, clean living, trying to get there, doing his Secret Service thing. You know, he's supposed to go in there and get us our evidence. He's not supposed to go in there and attack everybody, but he is supposed to go in and get them evidence and come out in one piece. And of course, you're thinking, oh, all right, he's going to go in and going out there. But of course, it slowly builds up, and you're building up to this sort of crescendo. You know, he goes down into the cavern, and then when we're just on the way, you know, he has this little fight. Just before he goes down in the cavern, and of course, what you find is that there's that silly little bit where the dog barks him and he jumps, a thing that was very much for the Chinese, where they reverse back the footage and Bruce jumps up into the tree. That was a little bit hard to swallow for the Westerners, but you know, it was a typical thing for the Chinese style, and played to that way of kung fu movies at the time. And then, of course, down he goes, and away we go. Next bit, move on. And you know, you see the Bolo Young, you see the strength of Bolo Young killing the guards, and we have the tournament, and we have Jim Kelly against Peter Archer, and again you see this, you know, you see the theme, and you're getting the feel of what martial arts is all about. Remember, most of us at that time had no clue to what martial arts is. No clue. Don't start saying anything. We'd seen, maybe a little bit in the, the Avengers, if because the Avengers had been shown in America, and there was the little bits and clips of karate and judo that turned up in odd bits of film. But nothing in the extent that was there. And of course, we'd have David Carradine in slow motion doing the kung fu, but not the power and the noises that had actually came with the film. So that was the electric thing. This, every time you sat in the theatre, everything was got hit. It sounded like they'd really got a good slapping. You know what I mean? And they were going down. You know what I mean? And it was quite powerful because the volume was whacked up, so when somebody got hit, it felt. And then you get to the bit where Bruce is fighting Bob Wall. That's the bit that it nearly makes you jump out of your seat. They meet their hands together, and that first hit, I mean, you nearly jump out. It's so loud and so powerful, and I think they whacked the sound up for it to give them a much more visual and sound effect. But you just went, whoa, 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 and the speed was amazing. You know what I mean? And then you were glued. Then you couldn't keep your eyes off Bruce. And no matter what Bob Wall did, again, was amazing. Again, we've got to come back to a little bit of a trick. We all thought that Bruce had done the back somersault when Bob Wall picks his foot up. No. The pictures don't lie. And there we are. The double stands in again. Yun-Wha does an absolutely fantastic piece. But all the publicity absolutely plays on that. It is not Bruce Lee. It is the wonderful Yun-Wha. And I've got to give him a lot of credit for that. Next move on, we then go sauntering through the film at a whacking great speed. You now know what you're up against. You now know what you're getting. You're waiting for Bruce to come back onto the screen again. We got Jim Kelly, we got everybody else. We got Bruce going down the cavern, and once he gets down the cavern, it's just, you can't keep your eyes off the screen. He is just electric. He makes everybody come to him. His fight with the bow is amazing. His fight with just open hand on with sticks and with Kali sticks. And then, of course, we get to the nunchuckers. When you get to the nunchuckers, you were just blown away. I don't care who you are. 50 years down the line, you were just blown away. This guy gets a couple of pieces of wood and a bit of chain in between and whips it around his body faster than you can ever think about, catching it, moving it. So accurate, so speed. You don't see the outtakes. You don't know how much trouble he actually went to actually get to that, but it just looks amazing. And the sound to it is absolutely amazing as well. And you're just electrified. You just cannot take your eyes off them. You want to do, you think, gee, I want a pair of them. I want to be able to do that. And that's what happens. 50 years on, people are still making millions and millions of pounds out of selling nunchuckers. Crumbs, it was only a little bit of a kind of a theatrical tool to emphasize the action and to say, look, I can knock out a few people. I'm not going to be able to punch everybody, take everybody on, but I've got a weapon. I can knock more people out. He'd already started with it in the Green Hornet. He moved on to it in Fist of Fury, double a job in Way of the Dragon, and by Enter the Dragon, it was just his signature weapon. Just like Indiana Jones' bullwhip, it was there. It still makes me laugh. And when I spoke to Guru Inasanto about it, he said, these tabak tayoks, and a Filipino tool, he uses them like a Filipino tool. He says, I'd rather have a Filipino Kali stick than a pair of nunchuckers because they're unwieldy and difficult to use and to get the accuracy out of them. But people still love them. People still train with them. Love it, fine. But it's just a theatrical prop, really. Moving on, Bruce goes through the whole thing. We get to the, fight in hand, the mirror scene. The mirror scene has absolutely everything there. It has the illusion, a very, very clever illusion. I've only just written a bit about it, how Robert Klaus came up with the idea from a boutique. They were in a boutique in Hong Kong, and he went, oh, yeah, mirrors there. That'd be a nice thing to have. So all this claiming that it came from this film and Orson Welles did it and sons and sons. Nah, it were a boutique in Hong Kong. There you go. There's a bit of that came from I think that came from Gil Hubs or something like that. So basically, that was it. And as I say, as everybody came out after being punched and pummeled and everything came off from from the film. As the celluloid hit you in the face, your brain was just a mess. You were sort of like geared. You're like, God, you know, you want nunchucks, you want to learn to fight, you want to do it, and especially if you were me, if you were the little quiet kid, if you were the kid that was bullied at school, this was the tool. This was the answer to all your prayers. Go learn some martial arts, and your answer, you know, all your prayers would be answers. It was a lie, but it helped you give that inspiration, that confidence to feel, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I'm going to give I'm going to stand my ground a little bit. And that was it. So yeah, Enter the Dragon, a lot of power, a lot of power. 50 years ago, it must have been absolutely amazing to be there on the 19th of August.
Why did it make such a big impact?
Word of mouth really did the trick. Because you can remember, we're talking 1973, we weren't computers, we weren't social media, you know, there wasn't the things there that actually, you know, we have these days that, you know, you only have to be a little bit sensational and everybody's there and, oh yes, we've got to see it. Things now live and die by social media. In them days, it was mouth to mouth and, you know, and advertising and, you know, being there, but literally mouth, word of mouth got around, and it was just, you know, you had to see it. It was one of those films that you had to see. It wasn't whatever. I mean, the proof was that if you wanted to go to see the film, the audiences had to wait outside. So one performance went in, you were waiting an hour, 2 hours to actually get into the movie. Something that happened with Star Wars and a few other films, you know, of that time. You know, the queue was miles long, you know, and you'd say to him, is this the queue for the next? Oh, no, this is not the queue for the next performance. This is the queue for the performance after that performance. And you're thinking, I'm going to have to wait in this queue 3 hours just to see this film. But people did it. People did it. People were so desperate because once they'd got into the queue, it's like, I'm going to go see it. I've not got anything else. And you get a cup of coffee, tea or whatever, you know, off the street, and you'd be sat there, you know, take a couple of sandwiches and wait for you to go see this film. But once you've seen it, then you could talk about it. And of course, the more people that saw it, it was just like a steamroller effect. You know, actually, once you'd seen it, you went on and told another 10 people, and them 10 people, they had to go see it. And so that was it. And you know, Warner Brothers just rubbed their hands together. I don't think they could get enough prints together to actually fill the cinemas. You were got to print some more. You know, this cinema wants one. This cinema wants one. You know, when they were just like, crumbs, what we got here. And of course, as soon as that happened, there was a little bit of a somebody in Warner Brothers must have had a little bit of a heartache, because suddenly, after not trusting what Bruce could do, it was like, we haven't got Bruce. What do we do next? And of course, the next thing was to try and, you know, capture that bit again, and it's not easy. And the next thing they tried was Black Belt Jones with Jim Kelly, and trying to get into the blaxploitation, using the same team, everybody that had been involved with Enter the Dragon, try and pull them all in for Jim Kelly and see what it did. But Jim had his pose, and it was a great movie, but it just didn't have Bruce Lee, and that was the problem.
So Enter the Dragon made massive impact when it opened around the world. And why do you think that impact is still continuing today, 50 years later?
Enter the Dragon is the benchmark. These days, I think anybody sort of like looking on social media, they can watch hundreds and hundreds of martial arts fights. Everybody, there is really great talent. One of the great talents that's really missed, and is not a sort of like used to its maximum, is Scott Adkins. Scott Adkins should have his own films, and he should be making films again. I mean, there's many of us, you know, we have written scripts for Enter the Dragon 2. We're just waiting to do it and reinvent the formula. It's all there. Scott and several other people that are out there, they all need to get together and do that. But he needs to have his own bit. And there's several other people in America and England that are absolutely excellent, working their backsides off to emulate it. But where are we coming from? What is Enter the Dragon? Enter the Dragon, as I say, is the starting point. It's the point where everybody begins. Because in 1973, though the youth of today will not appreciate it, martial arts was not there. It was not in the films. It was the John Wayne throw, as Gene LaBelle used it, they start from one side of the picture and the punch. So it came from here and it went right across the film, so you got that massive sort of like punch instead of something direct, which was where Bruce was, and fast, where it was nearly so fast you couldn't even see it. But that's where the whole martial arts thing. Now you've got to look at all the big things of today. So your Marvels, your Star Wars, anything that comes out today, your DC, every one of them has got a martial arts fight in it. Tell me one that's not got a martial arts fight in it. It's always got a martial arts fight in it. Everything has got a martial arts fight in it. Where's it start from? Enter the Dragon. So it's longevity in this first extent of what I want to talk about is the power of Enter the Dragon. It's that the benchmark. It's where it started. So you can't take away. Oh yeah, you can say, oh well, I watched Enter the Dragon and it's not as good as. Oh, let me think. It's not as good as Marvel, and it was not good as Shang-Chi and stuff like that. Yeah, excuse me. This is where it started, mate. If you'd been in 1973, you wouldn't have known all about that. Therefore, what you're seeing in Shang-Chi is because of Enter the Dragon. You know what I mean? So don't try and change history just because it, oh, I don't like it. It's not fast enough. They're not doing this and they're not doing that. Yeah, come on. It's there. It's there. That's where it is. And Bruce still has that pulling power. And the great thing that I love, and I get Fred Weintraub sort of like came out with when I was interviewing him a long time ago. He just said, you go around and you say, kung fu or karate, and you say, name me a kung fu, person or something, and they don't come out with anybody. The first name, the man in the street, not the fan, not the person there, the man in the street, the person that you go, oh, I like martial arts and martial arts movies. Do you know one? Bruce Lee. They don't know anybody else. They don't know. Yeah, they might mention Jackie Chan, but no. The first word that's on every man's person, anybody in this planet life, the first word that come out is Bruce Lee. That's your benchmark because he's the one. He's the master. He's the one that you go from. And literally, and why not? It's there. And what a celebration we are. 50 years down the line, we're there with it. And Enter the Dragon has that pulling power.
So it's August 19th. Warner's are bringing out Enter the Dragon again, this time in a 4K remastering. What are the good and the bad things about this version of it?
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, it means that the clarity and the impact of Enter the Dragon will be on the best quality that you can get. And Warners have done everything that it's the usual. We'll put a package together. I think it's a steel book. There's little bits and pieces and lots of ephemera with it. And I'm sure it's going to look great. I mean, I was never so keen about the Blu-ray. The Blu-rays somehow I don't think they really tweaked it enough, but I think the 4K will definitely be something else. On the other hand, Warner Brothers from Enter the Dragon have made billions of dollars. You know what I mean? Whatever. Now, in my opinion, and I think this is, I'm entitled to my opinion, surely if you've got something that you know is so iconic 50 years down the line, you would do the absolute best you could to give the viewer, or if you're selling it to, the man in the street, surely you should give him absolutely anything and everything you can. That is linked to Enter the Dragon. Give him everything. There's not going to be. I mean, there might be an 100th anniversary, but I don't think we'll be on that format. So when you're onto a 4K format, surely it's a nice time to actually let everything go. Now comes the little bit of weirdness. thanks to sort of like I'd like to say the thanks to the influence of John Little, the monk scene that was cut out, where Bruce goes and meets Roy Chow as the head abbot, that was cut out. And again, it fulfilled a little bit there, and it teaches, Bruce's philosophy, and it gives you that fuller flavour of that scene, why he's going to Hans Island, and a little bit about gives a little bit of depth to Bruce's character. And we all loved it. And I mean, the first time that actually turned up was in Game of Death 2, something that the Japanese market actually asked for. After Game of Death, they said, "Oh, we want another film," and they went, "All right, we'll make another film. We'll use some clips from here and there," and so they used the outtakes, or things that were not used, or some of them that were not used, in Enter the Dragon, and this long scene was there. Again, in Game of Death 2. We have this wonderful little scene where Bruce actually walks into a room, and there's a whole bit where he walks into a room and picks up his book, and bits and pieces. Now, there is lots of footage. Not lots of, no, I don't know. Let's be truthful. Not lots of footage, but there's lots of linking footage, and especially that footage where he walks into the room, that actually just gives that little bit of flavour. And there is dialogue which actually explains what Bruce is doing. There is a little scene with Bruce talking to what is the old man. We call him the old man, and he goes, pay your respects to your mother and your sister. Prior to that, he does actually talk about his martial arts training in his book. So therefore, when he does talk about that, you then go to the room and he walks around and he's got one of his training manuals there. And so it makes sense. But because they cut out the old man scene where he talks about that, then they cut that scene out. Oh, it's dragging, it's doing it. But remember, we're talking 40K. We're talking 50th anniversary. Sure, it doesn't matter now. This is where it's coming into the collectors. This is where let's show them everything. We're not trying to do the impact of Enter the Dragon. That's done its business. They made billions of dollars. Let's make a bit more. Let's put a bit more into it. So there's that bit of the scene there that could be put back in. Then there's the other bits and pieces, like the Betty Chung talk. Bruce actually goes out of his room twice. You know what I mean? And that's not actually fulfilled totally. And talking to Betty Chung, and Betty giving more depth to what's actually happening and what she knows is happening on Hans Island. All that footage exists. Walt Missingham turned that up as 2 reels that were up at Golden Harvest Studios. They're there. They're waiting. They're just sat there. Oh yeah, thank you very much. Nobody's touching them. Nobody's touching them. And at the end of it, I mean, there's some those other little bits that are there that just fill it in. Then it's not hours, it's minutes. But look how Arrow Films have made massive, massive, massive plus points with their sellout Golden Harvest collection, because they put a lot of time and trouble into the Big Boss. And I spoke to James Flower, and James Flower was talking about, could they have Enter the Dragon and do that for the box set? And Warner says, no, we're going to do our own. But they haven't gone to the time and trouble to put that extra effort in. And I just don't understand why. And now the opportunity for that maybe is missed. Maybe it hasn't. Maybe, this might be picked up by the fans. The fans will run with it. They'll start demanding that, that Warner's put this back in, and Warner's find somewhere in the heart to say, yeah, go on, we've made millions. It's not going to cost us. I think it'd take them, a day and a half to put the footage back in and clean it up. That's it. And they're going to make millions more out of it. It's just, it's just a little bit silly to me, but that's my opinion. And I feel that they're just lacking to give those, the fans, and also to educate the public, because with those bits, like in The Big Boss, it makes it a bit more understandable. You understand the storyline a little bit more. And I think it is just a little bit unfair of Warner's, when they could make a big thing. And if it had been a Jack Nicholson film, a Clint Eastwood film, I'm sure they would have done it. But it's Bruce Lee. It's only Bruce Lee, And most of the people in Warner's, most of them, and I might be wrong, but most of them will be young, people coming, they won't have a clue about the 1973 and the big impact of Bruce. So it's a trick that's missed, but is it? Maybe the fans will grab hold of them by the throat and say, Warner's, come on, give us what we want. There's no reason now. We'll buy it, you just supply it.
Do you mean just add in the additional as extras, or do you mean do a recut?
Yeah, do a recut. Do a recut. Just no, you don't. You just have to put the bits in the right places. It's an A, B, and C. It's an editor's dream. I mean, you're an editor of yourself. You could do it. I know. I don't know how long editing takes. I think if you're passionate enough, I don't think it would take that long to put the bits back in. It's only a second here and a minute there and stuff like that, and it just makes the film, just like The Big Boss, a little bit more well-rounded. And I think it would just, it would give fans. It wouldn't. I mean, it's not like we're watching Game of Death 2 and going, "Oh, that's a scene from Enter the Dragon that they left out." Why? Why don't you put it back in Enter the Dragon? Why? Maybe it's just me being, too, what is it saying? Making the film a little bit more than what it was. I know why it's got taken out. I know that when they were making it and when they were putting it out, they'll have said this is slow. This might slow the pace down. But these days, 50 years on, does it matter if it slows the pace down? If it gives extra minutes to the film, that's what you're selling to your fans. That's what you're selling to the public. Surely you're going to give them extra. I mean, I know they did that with The Wicker Man. They've done that with absolutely loads of films. Did it with Alien. Alien, they put loads back in that they'd cut out. So why can't they do it with Bruce? I don't know.
Tell me a bit about the people who were in the film.
It's quite nice to talk about the people because sadly we've just about lost everybody now. From Enter the Dragon, on screen and off screen. There's only a few of them left now. It was nice to see Michael Allen made an appearance. Gil Hupps made an appearance not so long back. But a lot of them now, in the period of the last 10 years, we've lost most of them, you know what I mean? And I'm quite proud to say that, I have had time to meet most of them and talk to them at least a little bit. I mean, I think the funny story is John Saxon. John Saxon started coming over to England to do Autographica. And I thought, oh, John Saxon, I've got to be there. So I went down to Autographica, met him, and he was signing things away. And I said, John, I said, well, and he had pitifully low numbers signing autographs because they would got him up for a cult TV event. So he'd been in a film called Planet Earth. So he'd been in $6 Million Man and stuff like that. So he was signing sort of like to cult TV people and a few bits and pieces, Nightmare on Elm Street people and that's things like that. I said, you need to come to a Seni. And he says, what's Seni? I said, Seni's a martial arts show. And he went, oh, okay. Anyway, he came again, did another Autographica, and took a guy called Mike Ellis down, who was in touch with the David Tadman in America, and they started working together. And they came up with a project called 12 Weeks in Hong Kong. And at the end of it, John says, "All right, I'll come," and they paid for him to come over to Seni. And I'd always said to John, you should come to Seni. You won't believe the amount of people they'll want to meet you. And he went, yeah. And of course, it was, as I say, every time he'd done an Autographica, pitiful numbers. And I always loved it at the end because John signed absolutely loads of things for me. And I said, oh, thank you very much. That's very kind. He said, Andrew, I says, what? He says, you remember you told me to come to Seni? I said, yeah. He says, from the minute that I started signing, I have not stopped for 2 solid days. He says, my fingers are hurting. He says, but thank you so much. He said, I have met so many Bruce Lee fans, so many Enter the Dragon fans and Bruce Lee fans. It's just been unbelievable. I said, John, I did say, come to Seni and you'll have a wonderful time. Jim Kelly, I only saw for a little bit. He was brought over by Chris Alexis, and that was nice to meet Jim. Bob Wall was great. Bob was absolutely fantastic. We did an interview with Bob in his office in Wall Street. He was the only guy that we did when we were doing the documentary that actually had makeup. Mr. Wall will be a minute or two, and you could see the girl in the back making makeup, and he was wonderful, full of what Bob Wall was all about and stuff like that. Big character, but lovely with it, and plenty of time and talked beautifully. You know what I mean? Everybody else I met, Paul Heller, you couldn't wish for a better guy. Fred was an absolute dream to talk to. And yeah, you know, everybody you meet. Bolo was funny in Hong Kong. He turned around and he had some lovely sort of like, I talk about Enter the Dragon and Bruce Lee, you know, best guy in, you know, he just couldn't say enough good stuff about Bruce Lee. And, you know, don't try and make an Enter the Dragon 2 because you haven't got Bruce Lee. It's not going to work. So, and so that went on. But most of the people, the saddest thing was the Anna Capri. Walt Michigan set me up an interview with Anna Capri while I was in America. And I got a phone call from her one evening as I was flying back the next day. And she said, will you come over now? And I said, I'm going to get a plane in about 4 hours' time. I can't come. And it was a heartbreak. I know David Tadman got an interview with her, but it was so sad because I would have loved to interview Anna, especially when she did the 8mm, which has appeared in Blood and Steel, a documentary about the making of Enter the Dragon. Well, it's been an absolute fantastic to talk about. 19th of August, we'll talk again soon, I hope. We've got a few more little bits coming up. But yeah, there you go. And everybody today, 19th of August, watch Enter the Dragon. You won't miss a trick. And Bruce, he still hits hard.